Hey folks, good afternoon and welcome to today's video. Today we are playing Mathel's Hollow Palm Sunder build. I'm going to run you through how we leveled it, how it played, and the gear. And I just want to say before we begin, absolutely fantastic build. One of the most fun builds I've played in a long time. It surprised me a lot. Very enjoyable. General premise, if we just jump into a Blood Aqueducts just so you can see some quick gameplay. We have Sunder, which is back on the menu. You can see that it's barely a melee skill, and we also have this big ancestral slam coming down, and we are zipping through with molten shell and all of our flasks, and we are smashing through everything. This is great with linear maps. It's great for delving because you can just sprint up and just clear the whole room. You have your ancestral totem to proc extra damage. We've got our dash. We are super tanky. We have 100,000 armor and evasion. We are a champion with perma fortify. We have impale, and it's just been an absolutely wonderful build to play with. Importantly, one of the best leveling experiences I've had in Path of Exile. So if you're somebody that likes to play new builds, but you hate the idea of leveling because it's slow and boring, and you die to certain bosses and you've got to min-max your gear and it just doesn't feel great, this is the build for you. So the general premise of the build is as follows. We have Hollow Palm. Hollow Palm is, if I could press the right button here, means that we cannot use, I will move this keyboard out of the way so you can see my gear, we cannot use gloves or a weapon. So we're kind of constrained in that respect. And it gives you, if you can see down here, you count as dual wielding when you don't have a weapon or gloves. 14 more, so that's more attack speed, and flat fizz per 10 dexterity. So the general idea is we are scaling dexterity to give us flat physical, which is super nice. So the way we leveled this build, and we do have some footage to show you, but the way we leveled the build is we just rushed straight towards this dual socket here. So we went down here, picked up a few lives. At this point, we're just using any old weapon we can find. We're just meleeing our way through the campaign. And you could even rush to this dual socket if you wanted. You just want to rush, basically, to Hollow Palm as fast as you can. Any dual socket and whack this in. Then, every single time you get a bit of dexterity, you get flat physical, which is super busted early. And when you see the damage that we had whilst leveling, here's some footage of us leveling. So when we began, all we were doing was we were using anything. We were using some two-handed molten strike. We were working our way through that. And as you can see here, we are making our way to this dual socket. Now, when we eventually get to the dual socket and we are unencumbered, you will see some of the damage that we are producing. We are in Act 4 here. It took me about 4 hours to level. The reason for this, and you might think, oh, this build's got low life when you're leveling it. Yeah, it does have low life, but trust me, you will not have had more damage leveling this, most likely, unless you played some absolutely insane thing. I had 100,000 damage in Act 3, right? And all I had was a tabula, my 2 rings that cost a Chaos Orb each, and I ran through the entire game smashing everything. 100,000 damage. Normally you'll check your tooltip and you'll be like, oh nice, I've got like 3 or 4k, this is pretty good. 100,000 damage in this just one-shots everything. Every rare, every single kind of possible thing just gets one-shotted. So if we show you here, we'll come up to the Ring of Blades, and this is just the power of Hollow Palm. So you can just see there, phased. You just phase everything. You get fortify nodes, you get dexterity nodes, and there's a little bit of a respec which we can talk about, but you just one-shot everything. It's crazy. There is no monster gonna survive. It doesn't matter that you have a little bit of low health because you've rushed to dexterity nodes. You're just gonna obliterate through every piece of content like it's nothing. So you can see here, the gear we used was, we used this physical ring Lahoop. We used the Onslaught helmet, we had a tabula, we had some Lion's boots, and a Meginord's, that was it. That's all you use. That's all you need. This costs a handful of chaos, and you will just obliterate everything in your path. Trust me, it's again, one of the most fun pieces of leveling we've had. You just run through, and every single rare combination is just boom, one tapped. So no longer are you bored and thinking, oh, this is slow, I'm going to skip this rare because it's tanky. The leveling process makes this build worth playing, because once you've experienced it, you're like, yo, this is sick. So yeah, hands down, the best leveling I've had. I've never used Hollow Palm before, so if you're interested in making your leveling more enjoyable, we can show you here. All we've got is we have just the basic gear on. We have a K life. We're going into a lab here. I think this is our first lab to become a champion. So we're not even at our, like, we're not even fortified at this point or anything, and he's phased. You see that? That is just instantly phased, the whole lab in one single Sunder. So that's the level of damage you can expect. Now, we have killed Uber Elder on this, we've killed Cirrus, and Mathel has killed the Ubers, and on my POB, I actually have slightly more damage than Mathel, so I'm sure this is absolutely viable for all endgame content. Maybe Uber Cirrus, you know, you might have to spec into some Chaos res nodes because of this, but super good build. If you want to see, like, footage of it, I've got loads of it on my Twitch. So yeah, there's some stuff there that's viable. So we'll run through the gear. I'm just going to pull up a video here and just see if we do indeed have a clip of Uber Elder, just to show you a little bit more endgame damage. But the gear is dexterity stacking. That's the general idea of it. I'll show you the gems and some figures that you can aim for. So when we leveled, the tree didn't look exactly like this, but you're pretty much just gonna nip to Hollow Palm. You're gonna get some onslaught nodes, because we're gonna have onslaught with our helmet. You're gonna get some life nodes, and then you're gonna start traveling. And the thing with this is, it doesn't really matter that you have a low health pool, and it doesn't matter that you're traveling, because every time you pick up dexterity, it gives you flat physical. And so traveling to these nodes up here is actually just damage. It really doesn't matter. So yeah, that was pretty decent stuff. Though I'll link the path of building, by the way, so you can see all of that stuff. The gear itself, so there's just a couple of things that are maybe a little bit confusing. We have a dancing dervish, even though we're unarmed. Basically what we're doing is we're spinning, and when this begins to spin, it will proc rampage, and then we're just weapon swapping back to unarmed. The reason we have this wand in here, or it doesn't matter what it is, it just needs to be something you can't use based on your stats, is if you don't have this wand or a weapon here, then when you try to weapon swap, you won't be able to. And I'm using the X key to weapon swap. If you don't have a weapon here, you'll just keep the dancing dervish out, and then obviously we can't Sunder because we have a weapon, so that's why that's in there. The general gear, right, and we'll talk about flasks and all this stuff. We have dexterity rings. The hard part about this build, but the enjoyable part in a way, is all stat-based builds are a little bit finicky to get going. So you'll obliterate the campaign, and then when you head into maps, you'll have very low life. You'll be like, I'm not sure about this. My damage might fall off a little bit towards like tier 10s or something, and then you'll be able to like really juice up your build once the perseverance comes on. So on our rings, we just have dexterity and life. That's it, right? If you can get resistances and you can get other stuff, that's fantastic. Now, the way I've done the character is slightly different to Mathel. Mathel obviously has his own way of doing it. I've, you know, slightly done it ever so slightly differently, but it's literally the same. So I've gone ahead and got accuracy on my gear. The reason I've got accuracy on my gear is the following. One of the only difficult aspects of the build is this. So you will get 40% more attack speed if your accuracy is higher than your maximum life. Now, early on, this will be no issue because you'll have so much dexterity and your life will be so low that you will always have more accuracy than your life. However, as you start to get into the 3.5k, the 4k life, you're going to need some accuracy. Now, Mathel takes these nodes here, which are nice because they give you global accuracy and resistance. So if you're struggling to get your accuracy and you're struggling to cap your resistances because we don't have a pair of gloves, right, or a weapon, you can take this node. Because I basically got lucky, and when I was crafting this helmet, I got 600 accuracy, and I also, this ring that I purchased happened to have accuracy on it. I actually wasn't thinking about that at the time. It allowed me to drop this wheel. So that was kind of it. You could also get some accuracy on your amulet. So let's talk about the gear. Sunder enchant, I would say, is ideal. It's not going to make or break the build, but a Sunder enchant shouldn't be too expensive. There are a couple of things. You want the mana reservation cost of skills. I'll be honest with you boys, that's about a 1 in 80 chance to hit, and they cost about 2C a pop. So if you're unlucky, that sucks. If you're lucky, that's great. The reason we use the mana reservation we'll talk about, but basically what we wanted here was dexterity and life. I could re-roll this and look for more life pool or get resists, because I am struggling with resists. If that intelligence could be a resistance, or it could be 100 life. The reason I've decided to keep it is because it did roll the accuracy, and it did roll tier 1 armor and evasion, which obviously gives us damage due to our perseverance belt, which we can talk about. So basically we're going for amulets like % dex. Bear in mind you can bless these and catalyst them, and we're just putting deafening essence of sorrows on, which are 2C, and we're trying to get dex attributes and then whatever you need. My previous amulet, which you can see here, had accuracy on it, and it had slightly, I think it has slightly more life. Yeah, because this has no life, because obviously I exalted mana onto it. Classic. But you can see that it that's kind of what we're going for. Dex, maybe some armor or evasion, whatever you're missing, a resistance if you're missing something, and then the non-channeling skills, again, which you don't need up until, like, I would say honestly, end game. You don't need this until end game, and that's not a copium thing, that's true. So dexterity gear is good, resistance good, that's what we're trying to get. Now the chest piece, I got one of these with fractured. Now fractured armor and evasion is cheap as anything, so you know, that's no problem. I then spammed dexterity essences on it. It's not the best chest piece in the world. It's got reflect fizz, it's got a crafted resistance, it's pretty damn cheap, and I manually 6-linked this. Fuses are so cheap that you should have no issue. If you're gonna craft your own, by the way, just use a perfect fossil beforehand, get your quality up. You see mine's 27 quality, gives you a bit more armor and evasion, which is damage, and it makes it easier to 6-link. The boots are the Garrican's Flight, which give us life per 10 dex, and it makes us immune to Burning Ground, Shock Ground, and Chill Ground, which is lovely. Gives us some dex and move speed, and I enchanted these with attack and cast speed. You could get some regen to help you out. All kinds of stuff could go on the boots. So these were, if we price check them, they are a Divine Orb, or 100C it looks like. Maybe it's because of the rolls, but yeah, 180C. These were actually 50C when I bought these, so that's a little bit unfortunate that they have gone up in price by quite a large amount. However, yeah, the next piece of gear is the Perseverance. This is where your damage goes through the roof. So the reason this build functions is we are a champion, and we're stacking armor and evasion, and we are going to get 1% attack damage per 200 of the lowest. So whichever stat is lowest, that's kind of how we're scaling it. So typically your armor is going to be the lowest. This is why it's important to sort the flasks out, which we'll show you. But based off our lowest, so we're trying to get the armor and evasion to be equally as high as each other, which is why I'm crafting armor and evasion on my gear. I'm working hard to keep that up because, yeah, it's a lot of damage. This belt was 40 Chaos Orbs, and I then ran it through the lab, and I enchanted armor whilst fortified. So this has elemental resistances on it, which really helps. And the Grace Aura effect is nice, but actually, because our armor is the lowest, it would be better if it was Determination. This was the one we were using beforehand. So you can see 671 damage, 673 damage. It's negligible. I'm just using it for the resists. Try and get the best roll you can. max life. I went for obviously 40 cold res because without gloves it's quite difficult to cap your resistances. And do note, by the way, if you take a look at this mirrored gear and it looks expensive, don't worry about it too much, because you can get rings that have flat dexterity on them, such as this one. And you can get, you know, a good, what have we got here? 72 dexterity, and then you can actually just craft everything on that you want. So yeah, you might be losing, what, 30 dex compared to this one, but this allows you to craft all kinds of stuff on. You can enchant it, blight it up. So until you're getting into the end game, you don't really need to search for some incredibly expensive rings, in my opinion. So that's the general gear. Now the flasks I think are super important. So you can see here 673,000 damage, right? If I take this belt off, 300k. So this belt, it's a 1 chaos orb belt, and it's giving us double damage permanently, effectively. Now the flasks, we have armor, because it's our lowest. This will obviously depend on what stat is lowest for you, but my armor's my lowest, so I've got armor, increased armor, and then I've got attack speed. When I push all of these flasks, I'm getting another 200,000 damage. And the way I'm helping myself maintain these flasks is gain charge when you are hit. I didn't have that up until now, so these are like min-max late game choices, but I'm just showing you in case you want to go down that route. And I just have an ignite flask because I do have corrupting blood immunity via a duel, but you can just have corrupting blood on this instead. The gems we're using, obviously we're a bit stuck for sockets and things. So we have molten shell, which we have on our movement skill, so it's always on, because that again gives us armor, which gives us damage. You'll see here we have 670k, and now we have 700k, so it's defense and damage, which is why the build's nice. Molten shell, blood and sand, dash, war chief, stand near it, get extra damage. Ruthless, awakened melee, pulverize, awakened brutality, fist of war, and anomalous sunder for AoE. Sorry, not AoE, for reduced delay between waves, so you get that extra wave coming up basically kind of like instantly. Now we didn't use Ruthless for the longest time. We actually used, if I've still got it here, life tap, and this basically means that it costs a small amount of life to cast the skill and you'll never run out of mana, whereas as you can see with Ruthless, I will eventually run out of mana. But we've kind of fixed it with this non-channeling and some of the mana stuff, which I'll chat about. For the longest time, though, we were using life tap. But late game, once you've got your gear going and everything sorted, once you fix your mana, you can pop in Ruthless, which gives you basically a massive third hit of damage. So that's kind of how the build's functioning. As an Ascendancy, we took 2 bandits and... if I can remember the button, we have these are our Ascendancy Order. Ascendancy Order was just fortify stuff first, then it was inspirational, and then it was the impale last. I have a timeless duel here. If you want to know how to get a good timeless duel, I have a video on my channel. This gives us some dex, some increase of non-curse, some dex, and a bit of cold res because we needed it. And yeah, it's just been a super good, fun build. So the main problem is obviously keeping your accuracy high, working on your life pool, but we're pretty defensive anyway. And the last thing, again, mana reservation here. We have non-curse aura effect here, and we have enchanted sovereignty or sovereignty, which gives us mana reservation. That is 3 silvers, which I think is about 50 chaos. So yeah, that is how we're solving our mana, and we're able to run Dread Banner because that's free. Blood and Sand, make sure to put it in blood mode for extra damage, sand for AoE. Determination, Pride, and Grace. So we have a lot of auras here. We're very defensive, and we can run them all absolutely fine. whilst leveling and stuff like that, don't worry, you're not going to have 5 auras on, and you don't need it. This is like, as your gear improves, you can whack the auras on. The way we solved our mana issue was different to Mathel's build. I think Mathel's rings had a lot of flat mana on. You know how they get mirrored and boosted up? I think he had a lot of mana. I was really struggling for mana, so what I did was, with my cluster jewel, if you're interested, this was cheap. Battle Hardened and Fundamentals, if we take a look at the price, 60 Chaos, and then we have Evasion and Armor, which is damage effectively and defense, and we have resistances here. Again, if you don't need the resistances, if you find some amazing ring, or your amulet has a ton of resists, or your chest has triple tier 1 resists, right, which could be a thing. I could get a tier 1 triple base, and then maybe I can get a much better amulet which is damage, you know. So there's ways. The fun about stat stacking builds, right, is these pieces of gear aren't locked in place. It's very flexible. So if you get a load of resists on your chest piece and think, well, I've got no dexterity, you can find extra damage on the amulet because you don't need the resistance, etc. So for my cluster jewel, I've got resistances, and on my other cluster jewel, what I have is armor and evasion again, and then I have pride reservation with AoE because it's helpful to have a little bit of AoE for your auras. Now, this, if we refund this, we still have mana. We still have 63 mana. You can still play the build and run everything, so don't be worried about that you need some specific crazy jewel, because you would then just put life tap in, and you can see we're absolutely fine. It was just I wanted to use Ruthless, so I found this. You can find a Grace one. You could find a Determination one, I'm sure. There's ways to do it. You could find more mana on the tree. But that's how I solved my mana issue. And we are then slowly, these are like sort of your last nodes, working on the Impale chance. And you will see that our Impale chance is capped. It's over 100%. So we're always impaling. The last piece of min-maxing that I did on the build yesterday was we got Awakened Gems. I wasn't sure when I looked at the path of building, you see, when I looked at the path of building, in the configurations it said that the enemy was intimidated, taking 10% increased attack damage, and having 15% reduced physical damage. This is really big, right? And I wasn't sure how we were doing that, because when I was looking at Mathel's build, I was like, how is he intimidating them? But it turns out that when your Awakened Gems turn to level 5, they get Crush and Intimidate. So those are like the last ones. I killed Uber Elder and the Uber bosses without these gems being awakened. So it's really unimportant, to be honest. But it's, again, just going to be a nicety for the min-max later on. And that's really it. It's just been a very, very enjoyable build. There's some things as well that it's pretty good at, to be honest. It's got me down in the mine because we're so tanky with our armor and evasion and stuff. It's got me all the way down to almost depth 300, and we have a couple bosses to kill soon, which should be fun. And yeah, it's just been a very, very enjoyable build. Really do recommend it, highly recommend it. Just thought I'd chat about the gear, because obviously if you want to see crazy gameplay and all of that, Mathel's got that, but I know he's a busy man, and maybe I can explain it a little bit more, or do another video on it, you know, to help out those people trying his build. That's kind of what I do on this channel. I don't make builds, I don't come up with any crazy ideas. I just like to pick a build that looks fun, try it out, work on the gear, maybe come up with a slightly different take on it, or just explain how I got around it. Because here's the thing, right? You're not going to have the exact same gear as a streamer. So when he has a lot more dex and life, yeah, I have a bit lower life, but I've managed to get some accuracy. You know, I've managed to rejig things around. It's about not copying the streamer, you know, or whatever. It's about seeing how the problems they face, like, right, there's low resistances in this build, how do we solve this? Well, let's get a resistance on our jewel, etc. So overall, I ended up spending for this build, if you're interested in a price, it was about I think this was 150 chaos. This one was a divine orb. I crafted this myself with a few dexterity essences. These were 50c. This was 640c. I think this was 12 chaos for the base, and then probably like a divine's worth of crafting. Let's say a divine on the chest piece, because I had to buy some fuses and I had to spam some essences. But it is now farmed me. We're up to 9 divines. We've got a ton of stuff to sell. And it's now fully going. We're crushing through maps. We're doing the end game content. We've got all of our watchstones, and I've really enjoyed it. And thanks to Mathel for showing this build, because I'd have never come up with it. I'd have never considered it, and it was a really enjoyable leveling experience. So shout out to Mathel. I'll link his video in the description. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment, leave a like, consider subscribing, checking me out on Twitch, all that good stuff. Have a great evening or morning wherever you're viewing this from. Peace. Oh, actually, just before we go, should we see if we have the Uber Elder footage, just in case? Do we have the Uber Elder footage? Yes, we do. Look at this. So we have a 3-minute Uber Elder kill, and you can see that this is before I'd done any min-maxing. There was no min-maxing in this build. I hadn't got any gems leveled up, didn't have 21 gems, didn't have Intimidate, didn't have Crush, didn't have nearly as much. I think I had 1,100 dex. I've now almost got 1,400. And yeah, you look, just look, we're absolutely crushing and phasing through these guys. So I was trying to do the challenge, you know, where you don't drop a ball, just a personal challenge I like to do every league because I'm an idiot. But yeah, you can see Rampage going constantly because Dancing Dervish Rampage hits count as kills, and yeah, we're just absolutely crushing through this. You know, one tap in the portal, so you know we've got damage, blowing them up, and yeah, it's just super enjoyable. So yeah, thanks very much.